And we're off! Fingers on buzzers! Are you feeling lucky? Are you ready to play the game? Who's going to be quickest? Who's going to be luckiest?
This is not a game!
No, it's...
Pull to open.
Pull to open!
Yes, and what do you do?
I want to get you to see, and I'm almost there.
Why are you still talking?
Will there be music? Do you think people will be allowed to play violins?
Here come the drums!
So here it comes, the sound of drums. Here come the drums, here come the drums.
Hello, and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to render the theme tune of Doctor Who in completely random order. No, to go through the entire TV show of Doctor Who in random order. My name is Chris Taylor.
And I'm Pete Paschal. And Chris and I are a couple of guys who have been following the Doctor on his journey through time and space since a long time ago in time and space in both our lives. And we're bringing all that to bear on every episode of this show in the delightfully random order that a randomizer is serving it up to us.
Yes, and now we're following the randomizer rather than following the Doctor. We're following the randomizer following the Doctor.
Right.
So
the Angels may have the randomizer, but this week I think it might be the Zygons.
Yeah, the Zygons have the randomizer. Spoiler. But just to catch us up on where we've been, 4 episodes ago, we were at our very first Chris Eccleston story that we've done, Dalek. What a hell of a Eccleston story to start on, maybe the best.
Crowd goes wild.
Yeah, insert cheers here. 3 episodes ago, we went from a single Dalek to a single space whale in The Beast Below. The crowd doesn't go quite so wild. 2 episodes ago.
Crowd a little dismayed at the analogies made there, judging by our comments on TikTok. But anyway.
2 episodes ago, we reached back into the classic show because this is classic and new Who. They're equal opportunity in the randomizer's eyes, almost exactly equal, in fact. And we went to the William Hartnell Season 2 story, Season 2 opener, Planet of Giants, which we thought was the only 3-episode story in the classic run. We've since been corrected. We've even been to a 3-episode story in terms of the 2 Doctors. But there are a bunch of others in the McCoy era, which I can happily say that I've, not, as historians say, not my period. But yes,
well,
we had a few, and we've been corrected on this. We enjoy being corrected here on Pull to Open.
Yes, I feel genuinely dumb about this. Okay, guys, you're right. Yes, there were a lot of 3-episoders in the McCoy era, and it's not just Planet of Giants. So here's the thing. I in my defense, the McCoy era, they're all compressed. And the decision to go with a bunch of 3-episoders in that period was really budgetary. And this is me just equivocating and making excuses, I admit. But it is like, oh, right, yes. They had to do 3-episoders of things that would have otherwise been 4-parters or whatever, because they cut the budget and it was down from like 26 episodes to 14. So, but yes, our bad. There were a lot of 3-episoders. I don't really think the 2 Doctors counts as much. Honestly, I remember when I saw it for the first time in Western Canada, I think they'd already started chopping them up into Colin Baker's first season, which was 45-minute episodes. They started chopping those up into 25-minute episodes again and sort of inserting random cliffhangers in various places.
Very random.
I never really thought of it as a 3-episoder. But that's, again, this is all excuses. Our bad. We really need... we got to get more guests on to, correct us when we when stuff spills out of our heads that just isn't really accurate. So, anyway.
But then, Pete, what would all our Who nerd fans do if they couldn't correct us? Right? We have to throw in these breadcrumbs so that people can tell us how wrong we are.
Maybe we got to sort of go out of our way to be wrong. To make,
but yes,
guys,
we have been corrected. We have been corrected. So the complete classic series list of 3-episoders is Planet of Giants, 2 Doctors, Delta and the Bannerman, Dragonfire, Happiness Patrol, Civil Nemesis, Ghostlight, and Survival.
Even the last story of the classic
Yeah.
series is a 3-episoder. That's true.
Yeah, and
You explain a lot there.
It's kind of telling that this is the only thing that we're really talking about with Planet of Giants. It was not a very memorable story, as we discovered. But then we stepped back into our TARDIS, we fired up the randomizer, and the randomizer took us all the way to the other end of the Who quality spectrum to Blink.
Yes, and there was lots to talk about there.
Oh my goodness. It was not a blink and you'll miss it episode. It was, we nearly tilted the scales at 2 hours there, I think. But definitely
and I was a little
time.
scared going into that one. Is it going to hold up? Are we going to pick at it? And it completely held up. It was like, oh wow, what an amazing Viscount banger of an episode.
Indeed.
Our highest rating on the pull to open scale.
Absolutely, a Viscount blinker it was. And then we stepped back into the TARDIS, and appropriately enough, given that just over a year ago we went to the Day of the Doctor, we went to what is often considered a sequel to the Day of the Doctor, which is the Zygon Invasion and the Zygon Inversion.
Imagine the black screen in front of you, a typewriter font coming on. A year ago, there were 3 podcast hosts.
That's right.
And then they go ahead and check out YouTube, and you can see myself, Chris, and Elisa Stern, who joined us for that amazing commentary on the Day of the Doctor. That was a great
Puppet.
time.
I always have her little Dr. Puppet postcard here under the pull to open sign. Little Easter egg for fans.
Nice.
But yes, so now we are at the prequel/sequel to that.
And it's a kind of funny coincidence that it just came up in, as I said in the previous episode, where we're recutting those season 2 of Pull to Open episodes for video. And that just recently, again, another coincidence, it came up on the anniversary of Doctor Who, like the birthday of Doctor Who on November 23rd was the day we posted the Day of the Doctor podcast. And now here we are at the Zygon Inversion, and like again, kind of scared of the randomizer here. Like it's really,
scared of the randomizer,
intersecting our own schedule with the Doctor Who world, and funny connections are coming up.
Now we're in the era of Chat GPT. I don't know if you've messed around with that, Pete.
I have not messed around, but I've seen it. Yeah.
It's a little scary. Speaking of scary technology, and I think really we could have our scripts written for us. Not only could it pick a random episode, it could then go watch that episode, write a review, and then we just have to read it out, and then we're just voice actors at that point.
I'm sure we could get an AI to read it out. We could just kick our feet up and put the entire podcast on autopilot.
Could we even be AI right now? I mean, maybe this is us. This is our AI versions. We have to build in some mistakes. That's the only thing. That's the only way we're human. That's why we throw in things about 3-parters.
You know what we should do before we automate the entire podcast? We get an AI to be the third guest that someone reads out in a Dalek voice.
That reminds me of the Dalek relaxation tape, which I love. I don't know if you've seen that on YouTube. Google it, YouTube it. It's fantastic. Love the Dalek relaxation tape. Always. I actually brought that up yesterday. We're recording this the day after England played France. We're knocked out by France in the World Cup, and my wife was sitting there so stressed as there were a couple of penalties in the game. She was watching through her fingers, and she was so stressed that I said, "Would you like me to put on the Dalek relaxation tape?"
That's perfect. Did she?
No. Amazingly, she did not. But we did both, interestingly, given that we did this last time for Blink. But you may remember that I told you what my heart rate was after I did the TLDW summary.
Right.
And it was at about at that level, around 110 BPM during those penalties. So I think that we should make this a thing going forward. Is whoever does TLDW
give us a heart rate reading right after.
Exactly.
Okay, we can do that. I got an Apple Watch on. We can do this.
Exactly.
Oh man, I got 2 minutes. Like, I mean, you've just disturbingly reminded me I'm responsible for it this week, and I've got a full 2 minutes with what we're doing here with the inversion invasion double header.
We should have checked your heart rate before I told you that, and then after.
Well, we're going to get to it, guys.
Yep.
It's happening. We're going to get to this first Zygon episode post Day of the Doctor. It's obviously part of Series 9, which was a big multi-parter season. It's all going to be huge. But first, we must enter the Poll to Open feedback loop. The feedback loop, of course, we always love to talk about reviews. And if you have not left one yet, please do. Podcasts like this one. This is a podcast, by the way. Thrive on reviews. Whenever you review the podcast in a place like the Apple Podcast Store, it increases the visibility of the podcast in that app. So to ensure more people find our amazing journey and accompany us on it, please go ahead to the store, leave a review. And our thing on Poll to Open is that we love it when people leave emoji titles, basically titles of Doctor Who stories in emoji form. And you could just leave one of those and hopefully a star rating, like maybe 5 stars, just popping into my head. One of those, the number of stars in my head is 5. I don't know why. But those emoji titles, we really love them. We like to do a segment on the show where we try to, brain tease ourselves essentially on what they could be.
We're fast becoming a game show, which is entirely appropriate for Zygon Inversion. But yeah, that's
right.
We were stumped last week by our friend Dalton on was it on Twitter?
It was on Twitter. Dalton's a prolific provider of these, and there was one that we didn't get, and it was essentially a negative sign or a dash, a person with their arms crossed in front of them, so representing no, I guess, or cross-checking, and the squiggle emoji, which can also look like kind of like a sine wave. Now, we didn't get it. Dalton has not. We just posted that pod yesterday at the time we're recording this, so he has not had a chance, I think, to reply. I went through the Codex because I had a little time, and I still don't know. So my best guess, and I'm sort of zeroing in on the sine wave, is either flux, this is flux, or something in New Who with the word end, which I'm sort of taking the cross-checking thing to be. So I thought maybe the end of time, or possibly Journey's End. I don't know, but those are my best guesses. So
I think you're right. I think it may be Flux, to give it its Sheffield name.
Thanks, Dan.
Flux. All right, Sheffield. I love it. Love the emoji reviews. Yes, please do leave us a review. Or if you find yourself trapped in a Zygon pod, please just be like Clara and kind of move your fingers so that your Zygon human version will actually leave a review for you. We'll have some tips on how to do that shortly. Clara,
hopefully the podcast is still accessible to you in the pod. Podcasts. How could it not be? Come on, Zygon. You got to keep these people entertained somehow. It's like the Zygon version of the Matrix, right?
I do hope that they have a way of rating those pods when you're inside them.
Anyway, good stuff. Keep the reviews coming, guys. Also in the feedback loop, YouTube has been amazing. We're getting all of our new episodes there Fridays. Our season 2 episodes. We're almost done season 2 there, and we're going to get into the season 3 stuff that we didn't upload. We only have about a dozen left, I think, and then we'll be fully caught up on YouTube, and I'm really excited for that to happen in the new year. All of our shorts, the ones we cut for TikTok mainly, are there. Our plot summaries are all there, TLDWs, that is. And we're getting more and more great comments like this one. So someone with the handle, it's just numbers, 818-1888. I hope that's not a phone number. Just
That's scarily close to my childhood phone number, but anyway.
But he left a great comment on our recent video for Blink. So he uploaded the podcast for Blink, and we talked a bit about the Angels and how, if the evil plot succeeded, would they challenge the Time Lords? And I love this comment because it's really sort of building on the headcanon we had there. And it goes, the Time War is called the Last Great Time War. So my new headcanon is maybe the ancient Time Lords fought a time war with the Weeping Angels, and the history of it was just lost to time, and they are quantum locked because that's how the Time Lords of old defeated the Angels. Woo!
Yeah, that's
like
great.
This. I like this idea.
That is some premium headcanon right there. I love it because, of course, we've been to State of Decay where we talked about, the little remembered fact that the Time Lords actually fought a war with vampires back in the day. Time Lords have a lot of history that they kind of keep buried, so it would not be surprising to find that this is the reason why the Angels are time locked. And maybe it's also, you could headcanon it a bit further and say that they took their power from the Time Lord. Their power to send people back in time maybe came from the Time Lords in the first place. Because otherwise, how would they have time travel technology otherwise? How does it work?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, but I also love the idea of maybe the Angels have a glorious golden age that they kind of want to get back, and it gives their race an overall kind of motivation. If
we do know that they've existed since the beginning of time. That's what they tell us about the Angels, right? Which suggests that they are older than the Time Lords, which suggests that they would fight a war with the Time Lords when the Time Lords came along, because they'd be like, what? You, Time Lord? Like, we're all over it. Like, maybe they had the power of sending people back in time, and they're like, we don't even shout about it. We're called the Weeping Angels. Yeah. You call yourselves Time Lords because it's the only thing you can do.
I can see the Time Lords just kind of like, we're the Weeping Angels, they say to them. And they're like, little on the nose, don't you think?
Yeah, who actually calls them the Weeping? Is that self-described? Is that actually a slur? Do they actually have a species name that we should be using instead? Yeah. Curious.
The Applauding Angels. Yeah, that's what they really want to be known as. Well, this is great.
Face-palming angels, yes.
Thank you so much, 818-18888. Keep those comments coming. I might have added an 8 there. I'm not sure.
Yep, indeed.
Everything's still going on the socials as well. We're continuing to upload to TikTok. We're like, as I record this, we may be crossing over the 9K mark. We're really got our sights set on that 10K mark. We're going to really do something special for the TikTok audience when we get there, and maybe we will soon.
Yeah, we'll run a 10K on TikTok.
That would be an amazing Christmas present for us, guys. So go ahead, keep sharing the TikToks with your friends, bookmarking them, and keep commenting because it's great. Also, we got a TikTok comment of the week. We love the interaction. We're getting more and more comments. We're talking about them. So someone commented on one of our Planet of Giants videos. We were sort of a little very good, kind of, I would say, critical, perhaps, of the cliffhangers in that story. The cliffhanger of the cat and the guy washing his hands. Yes. Some of the weirdest cliffhangers in Doctor Who history. So anyway, this person with the handle, and I love this handle. Yeah, it's Doctor Who .1963. Boom.
Yes.
I think this person's a fan of the classic series.
You think?
Because he says, or he or she says, love these cliffhangers. It gets laughs from me every time. Plus, only Doctor Who can make normal things scary. We need to revisit the miniature world, TBH. We do. I'd love to see a modern version of Planet of Giants with an actual budget, and especially now, Doctor Who is getting Disney-sized budgets. Mm-hmm. This is kind of a no-brainer idea. It would be great to revisit this, and maybe the Doctor can say something like, "No, not again." Yeah, it would be great. I think Doctor Who has certainly gone back to shrinking the idea, but every time it's not been like the real world, right? They've gone into someone's body or into a Dalek, or like we mentioned, Flatline, and it's kind of used a bit of as a gag.
They've kind of overshot.
Great, but it's also like coming back to this idea of making normal things scary, and honestly getting kind of a do-over of Planet of Giants, which the concept was okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, just the execution.
Yeah. Let's see it again. I'd love to see that happen. So RTD, as always, call us. Or just listen. Either way.
Just listen and take notes, my friend.
Yeah. Well, and we'll have plenty. Speaking of which, as we pull out of the feedback loop, a quick reminder, we're also on Twitter and Instagram at Pull2Open63. Loving all the conversation on those platforms. And as we emerge, we have some words from RTD recently in the most recent Doctor Who magazine that I believe you are probably more familiar with, Chris, but thank you for sharing. So before
I
we
have
get to
a
the comments,
digital subscription, and Pete has
Yeah.
a physical subscription.
so I'm glad we complement each other this way.
Indeed.
I have the archive that I could go back into, but I'm continually frustrated that I do not get my print edition at the same time the digital edition goes out. And for some reason, even though I got the print edition and I pay for it some exorbitant amount, it doesn't give you a digital subscription. I don't understand this. Why? How do I not get basically a free digital subscription with my print subscription? It's ridiculous. Come on,
Yeah.
Panini, step up. I should be getting both. Considering like I don't think I should say how much I'm paid for this because it's just nuts. But I think I'd be shameful. What are you doing? It's a down economy. You can't be paid for. No, I pay for Doctor Who magazine because I love it.
Got to.
And anyway,
Yeah, we love you, Doctor Who magazine, but yeah, get your digital side sorted out because it is ridiculous that print subscribers are penalized, especially when you are breaking news now, and especially as the comic strip is now canon continuity.
Yeah, the cover is the comic, right?
Yep. Yeah, so it is like making us wait, or making print subscribers wait for a new episode of Doctor Who for like a week after the digital people. So yes, love you, DWM. We're happy to advertise you as we do often on the show, but at the same time, yeah. Get it sorted.
It kind of reminds me of when they did the 5 Doctors for the 20th anniversary, and they broadcast it in the States first, which thanks very much. It was a good, neat thing to do, but I bet everyone in Britain, it was just like had their gape mouth, like hands out. WTF? Like, what are you doing?
Well, in those days, we didn't hear back from the US until the Clipper ship arrived, so it was fine. We were just all waiting on the dockside for word of what had happened and how was Richard Hurdnall and did Tom Baker actually show up.
All right. Well, the complaint section of Pull to Open, this new complaint segment is over, I think, and we're going to get right to the material. So RTD now. I've read a few things, and I think the most substantive thing he had to say was that the next season of Doctor Who is going to be 8 episodes long.
Yes.
So we haven't had a count yet on that. And that seems like it's a less than pre-Flux, but more than Flux, right?
It is, and I actually kind of like it because I think that there are always, obviously no season of Doctor Who can be full of Viscount bangers, but you could have a season that is just Viscount bangers and Daleks, with no Ogrons and no Professor Haters, to use the Pull to Open rating system. If you just sort of reduce it a bit, get rid of the the Vampires in Venice or whatever the dud of the season is, and just really, really focus all your energy on the really good scripts. So I kind of like that idea.
It's a good theory, right? Like, and I don't know if it to some extent it holds, and to some extent which is the theory being, of course, like, if you're not constantly rushing, you're going to be able to focus your energy better and essentially perfect the material you have. But that obviously that only works if the material is good in the first place. So you have something like what's a good example? Like Terminus, right? We've been to Terminus, and it was like they only had like a day or something to make the costume. I don't know what it was, but they a lot of like stuff did not come together in that episode, and it's almost a lot of the time it's like, it's rushing. We had to quickly do it. So fair enough, take out some stuff, but was really the underlying material good enough there? Like, would it have made much difference if those costumes on the Garm guards were actually worked and were thought through? I don't know, right? So that said, we've got RTD. He's fresh. He's obviously planning all this stuff in advance. He's probably his own best critic now, in terms of really delivering the goods. So I have faith that the theory that less is more will hold true in this case, but I don't think it necessarily always holds true, because there have been some really long seasons of some television, and again, this is a rarity, but it has happened, where it's not necessarily no duds, but the level of quality is high. And the one I would cite is the first season of Lost, which I thought was incredible, and a lot of it still holds up. And that was something like 25 or 26 episodes long. So
Yeah, that was a lot. I remember when we used to watch 26 episode seasons. My goodness,
right?
But yeah, it's interesting you zeroed in on that. It was not the first thing that jumps to mind, but I will point out that RTD has also said that there's going to be a story with an 8-word title. Which is incredible.
Does that beat Pyramid at the End of the World? Let me see. The Pyramid at the End of the World. Tide.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Big news soon, he says. And he loves to do this thing. RTD has done this quite a lot, where he just teases you by pulling words out of the scripts that he's writing. But the second special, he kind of buries clues in here, because yes, the world's wild Southampton vegetable bean and starlight are in there, but also the word flux with a capital F.
Right.
So there is continuity here with the Chibnall era, which is interesting.
Yeah.
The flux is going to be at least mentioned.
Yeah, and I like that. And there should be. I mean, he shouldn't just ignore everything. I mean, like, these things happened. Again, he doesn't have to dive into the timeless child thing right off the bat. I think, again, we've talked about that plenty of times, and I think it's best to let that rest for as long as possible until someone has a good idea to sort of bring it back. But yes, Flux happened. It was a big cataclysmic, universe-altering event. Let's mine stuff out of that. That's interesting, right?
Yeah,
I'd rather.
And RTD knows from cataclysmic universe-altering events. This is the guy that practically invented them.
Yeah, and he did such a good job at sort of referencing his own stuff. I mean, he was the only showrunner at the time in the new era, right? But like, if you look at things like the Waters of Mars, for example, and the stuff they do with the characters there, and the Dalek invasion that happened in Journey's End, is like, oh yeah, this is kind of cool. Like, you're really world building here. So yeah, more of that, please.
Yeah, and personally, my headline from the RTD interview was the fact that, we've all talked about the first appearance of Shutigatwa in the trailer. Where he says, "Someone tell me what the hell's going on here." I knew something was a bit off about that scene, and now RTD tells us that the background has been completely invented because, quote, "the actual location would give away too much."
Yeah,
interesting.
So it throws cold water on the theory that it was shot only for the trailer. So
yes, which was my initial thought.
Yeah, which is cool. So, but does that mean, are they going to either CGI out the mustache, or the Doctor has a mustache? Like, this is, I don't know why I'm obsessed over this, by the way. I just I've seen Ncuti with both the mustache and without. It really doesn't make much difference. But again, it is one of those first, right? He would not only be the first Black Doctor, he'd be the first Doctor with real facial hair, if you don't count Tennant's and Pertwee's sideburns.
That's right, and he's also got the untied bow tie and like the tuxedo shirt, and so that's legit. That's canon. Ncuti's going to be tuxed up. Yeah. He's going to be wearing a tux for the Flux.
Interesting. Maybe there's a thing where, because we've seen Neil Patrick Harris in a tux, right? In his
yes,
top hat and
indeed.
Tails. So I'm looking forward to the ballroom scene here. The Celestial Toy Maker.
Indeed, maybe they go dancing, and maybe this is a reason. Since we talked on the show before about the Tennant's clothes regenerating, we had a whole mini episode on that. How that might suggest that the Celestial Toy Maker is kind of dressing him up. Well, maybe it continues. Maybe the mustache is like he's trying different facial hair on the 15th Doctor. So it may not last, but yes, you're right. That is a canon mustache. It is the first mustache in the Doctor's history that isn't fake.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Anything more to
no, I'm picturing like a Brain of Morbius scene where it's like, how many mustaches have you had, Doctor?
Oh man, that's like season 82 of Doctor Who, where they've just completely run out of, there was a mustache in one of these backroom actors. Why don't we throw that in?
Season 82
mustache.
It reminds me of the Simpsons episode where they looked ahead to season 80 or whatever of the Simpsons. It was like, the Simpsons are going to Delaware. Love it.
Oh man,
mustache of doom.
Other little tidbits he put in that interview, or it wasn't an interview, it was a column. He talks about how the diamond logo, he brought it back because he loves it, not because it's the diamond anniversary, and that's good to know. But one of the big consequences of that is that it is staying. This is not a temporary logo. This is the logo for the next era of Doctor Who, which is really it's interesting that it's the first. We haven't really talked about the logo on this show, even though we mentioned it. It's the first like rehash logo of the new series, if you know what I mean. Like,
yeah, but it is the most beloved logo. I say that without fear of being corrected. I think it is the most beloved logo from the old series. It's the iconic one.
Oh. Yeah.
It's absolutely iconic 100%. And brings to mind Baker. Like anyone in the US who remembers Baker is going to look at this logo and go, yeah, a little piece of their childhood heart will jump out of their chests when you see that logo, right? Especially when it's sort of spiffed up and shiny.
It was everywhere. If you look at Doctor Who magazines at the time and the merchandise they did at the time, even I actually used to have the Doctor Who comic that Marvel Comics put out, which was really just compilations from the magazine. And it actually had both logos because I think it transitioned to the neon one, which I grew up with that one. So again, I understand why it may not be as beloved. I wouldn't mind seeing it back, but it is so emblematic of an era. Whereas
it's very 80s.
Yeah, the diamond logo. I mean, it's not explicitly 70s, right? Like that's the thing about it. It is probably font wise, you could pick at it, but it doesn't you don't see the diamond logo. It's like, oh, what is this? Is Jimi Hendrix going to be in the next episode, or we're going to have a disco episode? It's just
it's 70s, but it's like timeless 70s. It's like David Bowie 70s. Yeah, it just stands for all time. But yes, we should move on from that because there is this rumor that we're going to get more than just Doctor Who on Disney Plus.
Yeah, so this is just a rumor again. It's one of these things that I think it was either the Mail or the Mirror that reported it, so take it with a big grain of salt. But it sounds like a strategy, right? Because everyone wants to do their multi-universe, well, not multi-universe, but like a cinematic universe type strategy. So the rumor is that in addition to the main show, as they figure out what this universe looks like, we're going to get shows that are based around monsters. So you're going to have a Dalek show, a Cyberman show, a Sea Devil show, maybe even a Master show. So that's interesting idea. We've been recently critical of the Daleks being out on their own when we did the Dalek podcast.
Yeah.
Obviously, I love the idea of the franchise of Doctor Who expanding. We've seen that before with Sarah Jane Adventures, Torchwood. Even prior to that, you had K9 and Company, which wasn't much of anything, but there were attempts in the classic series. I don't know about this thing with the monsters, but I mean, being more charitable than I was in the Dalek pod, they've kind of done it with Big Finish, with the Dalek Empire stuff. And doing more of that sounds interesting, but I just don't know if Doctor Who monsters have this critical mass of interest, right? It's kind of like do you do the Empire show for Star Wars? I mean, they obviously do their own shows, but I think you could do it in Doctor Who. I just don't know if the monster thing works. That's kind of what I'm saying. Yeah,
it really needs to focus on a hero. There are many companions out there that are still fighting villainy as it pops up around the world, so we could see a lot of that. Maybe that's why Graham was under the volcano. Maybe it's Graham and Ace taking on the Silurians or whoever. Not that bad. Could be interesting. Or Martha Jones could be still out there.
It kind of. I mean, exactly. You kind of have, and they have to stand on their own, right? There needs to be some character development and things that they need to do beyond just fight the monsters.
Yeah, because if you want to make it Marvel-esque, like yes, Marvel did the Loki series, but Loki is, he's a special case. He's both, charming rogue and villain.
Yeah, you had a great performer. That really got the character and could show that nuance, right? I'm not that there's a lot of actors in Doctor Who that have that, but there kind of has to be buy-in from more than just this would be neat to see, Ace slamming. Well, I don't know if the baseball bat would keep coming back, but yeah, I think Sophie Aldred would certainly be up for it.
Oh, totally, yeah. Yeah, just I would watch just a whole season of Sophie Aldred smashing stuff with a baseball bat. I think that would have true crossover appeal. I think you run that during the World Series. You just like really appeal to the American audience with the baseball bat aspect. Yeah, that could be fun.
I think,
but I trust RTD.
Exactly.
I trust him to
and I
get
think
right.
he made the right calls with both Liz Sladen and John Barrowman in terms of leading those other shows and sort of being up for that and then building worlds around them, right? And the Sarah Jane one is probably closer to what we'd see. I know Torchwood was more like tried to be an adult show in some ways. And I think because of that, it consciously moved yes, it was part of the Doctor Who universe, but it's not like Daleks were showing up or whatever, right? Like there are other things. So I think you could kind of have the material within the show closer, a la the Sarah Jane Adventures, but do it with a little more of an ensemble cast the way that Torchwood did it. So sort of a mix of those two. But again, could you do a whole bunch? I don't know. Like, why not try it? But I'd also like, every time you have a turkey in this sort of experiment, it's going to sort of dilute the whole idea. So I hope they're a little cautious with it, assuming it's even true.
Yes, well, we have full faith and confidence in RTD to figure it out and know how to do it. But speaking of full faith and confidence, Pete, how are you feeling about TLDW?
Oh my God. That was quite a segue.
Thank you.
Are we doing it?
We're doing it.
Talk about it?
I think we procrastinated long enough.
I think you're right.
It is time to invert our invasion and invade our inversion.
Yeah.
And we always like to start off our discussion of these stories that we do with a little segment we call TLDW, Too Long Doctor Who, or Too Long Didn't Watch, or Too Long Don't Watch. I think Too Long do watch in this case, but yeah, we started off with 1 minute per new Who story. One of us attempts to summarize, and this week it is you, Pete, since I did Blink.
Oh, good God. Okay.
And you have a luxurious 2 minutes.
Do I? It's never luxurious.
Yes.
So this is the problem.
It is.
Especially with New Who. Because it's just
that is
packed.
true. It is packed. I don't think this is as packed as Blink. I have to say that one was a real barnstormer of a twisty plot.
Yeah, with this one, you could never you don't want to over prepare, you don't want to under prepare for these things. I don't. We tend to pretty much under prepare because we, obviously no notes, nothing. But I am. It's one of these things, and I'll get to it in the pod commentary, where there's a lot of things that they gloss over or say once when you feel like they should have said twice. And I honestly, we'll talk about it, but there's a few things I still don't understand. So I'll do my best.
Yeah. All right. Let's pull up the stopwatch, and here we go with the official pull to open summary of the Zygon Invasion and Zygon Inversion in 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so we're picking up years after the Day of the Doctor when the Zygons and the humans worked out a peace treaty where 20 million Zygons would essentially have asylum on Earth as long as they kept human form. But there's a Zygon splinter group called Truth or Consequences that wants to essentially kill that treaty and reveal all the Zygons, thus inciting a war and hoping that their side will win. The Doctor gets wind of this because Osgood, who was killed by the Master in the Cyberman episode, was a key to holding this treaty in place. There were 2 Osgoods, a human and a Zygon version, but one of them was killed. We don't know which. Now, the Truth or Consequences group captures Osgood, and the Doctor and Clara and Kate Stewart at UNIT come together to figure out how to find her. They think she's in maybe held in Turkmenistan in this Zygon training camp, but there's actually a town called Truth or Consequences in the United States that Kate goes to investigate. And meanwhile, Clara stays in London with UNIT to sort of try to figure out what the Zygons are doing there. So when they free Osgood, even though the UNIT soldiers in Turkmenistan are killed by the Zygon splinter group, and Clara goes into London and seems to, underneath it, there's a lot of pods of Zygons of people they've captured. But it turns out those are the originals of the Zygons, because obviously Zygons can duplicate themselves. They can change their appearance. And it turns out the Clara that we've been watching is actually a Zygon. And she's the leader of the Truth or Consequences group. So what happens is the Doctor nearly gets destroyed. Kate Stewart kills the Zygon in Truth or Consequence. They all come together at the Black Archive at the Tower of London, and there's these boxes that could kill either side. The Doctor talks the Zygon leader Bonnie out of it, even though she's in Claire's form, and she turns into Osgood again, and so there are now two Osgoods, and she promises to keep the peace, and it's
time. Wow, yeah, you pulled it out there at the end. I was a little worried because you were you were definitely you were still in episode 1 for about 90 seconds.
Well, I think it's kind of the meatier episode plot wise.
Yes,
certainly. So
is.
It makes sense. I wasn't too worried about that. I definitely had to gloss over the plane stuff and how they all kind of came back. But it's essentially like that scene with them with the Osgood boxes and hands on buttons is obviously like everything is leading up to that. And I couldn't fully explain it. I think I got the gist of it.
So I was thinking, what do you think of this, Pete? I thought we might do something a little new for this story, given that I reviewed it for Mashable at the time.
Ooh.
When it came out in 2015. We were both at Mashable at the time. And I would love to read out that review.
Okay.
We'll do it one by one. We'll do the invasion. I can skip over some bits. It's not that bit, not that big a review, but maybe you can sort of respond to it, because I kind of my overall impression has not changed, and this I may be kind of running against the grain here, because I saw that this both these episodes are pretty well reviewed.
Chris is going to go out now, guys, and I'm just going to talk to his review. But no, that's
so fine. I gave the Zygon Invasion a C+. I won't read the intro because it starts off by talking about the Day of the Doctor, explains the Day of the Doctor, explains why the Zygons worked. They're a fan favorite, genuinely terrifying with giant heads and red suckers all over their lizard bodies. They were the stuff of a fever dream. You see, I was talking about Doctor Who fever dreams even then. And yet they'd only appeared in one story. The subplot had a neat resolution. Now here comes the follow-up, Zygon Invasion, which unfortunately suffers greatly by comparison. Stephen Moffat says he envisioned this part of the plot first, and the Zygon subplot in Day of the Doctor emerged as a kind of prequel. But by assembling much of the same cast and introducing a new wrinkle, the Splinter Group, I said it ends up looking like a poor man's Day of the Doctor. And part of the problem is that the best returning member of that cast, Ingrid Oliver's Osgood, is missing in action for most of the episode. There are never enough good things to say about Osgood, a unit scientist who is at once earnest, lovable, and an affectionate parody of the nerdiest elements of fandom. When she was disintegrated in Death in Heaven, which somewhere else we've been, so it's kind of interesting the randomizer has chosen this.
There was all the Osgood episodes in,
indeed, collective outpouring of grief and nerd rage. That's right. We've completed the Osgood trilogy. Is she in any other?
I don't think
story?
So. But I now have less confidence in my encyclopedic knowledge, but no, nothing comes to mind.
Anyway, I did say that we should remember she has a Zygon double. Osgood number 2's refusal to say which one she is very well handled, human or Zygon. A deliberate decision that helped preserve a tenuous peace. Science fiction shows that bring characters back from the dead without explanation. I'm looking at you, Battlestar Galactica. Should take notes. Unfortunately, the decision makes the story a hunt for Osgood. It gives you the same problems you have in Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. And I suggested maybe also, because we hadn't seen The Force Awakens at that point, maybe just, hunting for Luke Skywalker might have the same problem. The person we want to see, person sort of, the greatest character, isn't on screen for at least most of the first episode. But so
do you want me to respond to this, or you got more?
Yeah. I'll pause there and see what you had to say about that.
So a bunch of things. So first of all, I want to get I want to be clear. I'm not slamming on Osgood, right? But I don't hold her up as high as I think you do or certain other people do. It's great. She's fun. She's great to see. But I mean, the fact that she's not in the first episode that much doesn't bother me, because I wasn't really longing to see her. I feel like Osgood works and she's fun, but she she's a little too much of a meta joke for me to take her 100% seriously as kind of a main character. All that, like, I love the stuff in the second part where she is talking about how she would, if she was the Doctor's enemy, she would never let him even get talking. She would kill him like immediately 12 times if necessary. I think those are genius lines. She's super fun. But again, other than that, I'm just like, is she really that memorable? Is she really that great a character? I don't know.
It's interesting watching it again after Power of the Doctor, because this time I noticed that, Osgood 1 has the scarf, which we saw in Day of the Doctor, and then Osgood 2 has the question mark sweater, which just post Power of the Doctor, that's like, this makes me think of the Master cosplaying the Doctor, right?
Yeah.
So it's maybe a little too obvious now.
I like that she has that commentary. They talk about the question mark.
Yeah. Why did you stop wearing question marks? And he says, I wear question mark underpants, which is, and we'll get to this, I think the Doctor's a little too erring on the side of loosey-goosey.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Like there's too many of those moments that Moffat just, I think, fell in love with as a line. But there was a kind of an opportunity to do something else. Like, it's fine to do jokes to a point, but I think there was an opportunity. Like, I know it's a minor thing, but there was an opportunity there to explore how he's changed and make even more of a meta comment about the new series versus the old series or something. Like, you could say, like, I've found that being enigmatic is overrated or something like that. I mean, which might not necessarily be true or whatever. I mean, you could have given something more there for fans to interpret, which is unfortunate.
J&T would spin in his grave.
But then the other thing you talked about was the Zygons, and I totally I don't know what it is about the Zygons, because I totally agree. I think they're a great villain. I think they're a great monster. Just the look of them is really, really cool. I can understand why people kind of wanted to see them back. I remember I was in that one of Doctor Who fan clubs in the 80s, and somehow Zygons just came up more than, like, say, the pteroleptils or the autons or whatever, right? Like, you just kind of like Zygons. It's just fun to say Zygon.
Yes.
It's a fun name.
It's a fun name. I mean, it gave me a great headline for this review, which was "Let Zygons be Zygons," but it's the triangular head. It really just it's something so creepy about that. I love it, with the suckers and everything. It's such a great design.
One of the things I really like about this episode in particular, because it does it much more than any other of the Zygon episodes, it shows that they are a multifaceted race, which is always more interesting. Yes, it's fun to see the Daleks and the Cybermen and the Autons to some extent. Like, there's these sort of not literally monochromatic, but like they all kind of, like, they're more of a force than a set of characters almost every time. And that's fun to do, but I really like it when you do things like say the Silurians and the Zygons here, where you see the villains have disagreements, the monsters have disagreements. They're not just one note villains. And here it really makes you think about it, and sort of the bigger analogies they're making with, like, there's a splinter group within them. And so the Zygons, and there's also the Zygon in the second part, where he's just like, I just want to hang out and, like, have TV dinners or whatever and just live my life. And he's being denied that, and you really feel for him, right? Like, I really like that they went there with the Zygons. And also, the last thing I'll say, I love that finally, as much as Kate Stewart loves it, they're not immune to bullets. Like, they're not super invulnerable, and they're so formidable. Like, too often Doctor Who writes itself into a corner with super formidable villains, and it really robs the credibility often in the final moments or the final episode of, like, how they're actually defeated, because it's like, well, you just spent all this time setting them up as this massive force. Even Blake suffers a little bit from this, right?
Yeah, and even Dalek, like, that's perhaps one of the few duff notes in Dalek, is the fact that the soldiers just keep firing bullets at the Dalek once it's clear that you cannot just you can't do anything. Maybe if you concentrate on the eye stalk, but, like, nothing's happening. Anyway, to get back to the Zygons, here's what I said about the problem in particularly in Zygon Invasion. Every other Zygon human double situation, other than Osgood, is played for maximum confusion, maximum cliches, and minimum believability. The Doctor spends a scene talking to creepy twin girls, lifted from The Shining. The girls are later vaporized with not enough setup to make us fully aware they were the Zygon High Command and we just witnessed a coup by the Splinter Group. Meanwhile, Kate Stewart spends half the episode in Truth or Consequences with a stereotypical battle-scarred police officer straight out of a Walking Dead type apocalypse show. Some 15 minutes of overacting later, the officer becomes a Zygon, inducing eye-rolling rather than terror.
So couple things here. So the little girl thing I thought was clever plot-wise. That's fun and interesting to see, like, the High Command essentially take on these forms that are super tiny, vulnerable. You would, in other words, sort of subverting their expectations. Here's the thing that doesn't work. And speaking as a parent, if you see creepy guy going up to little girls at a playground where there are other kids, it doesn't matter if they're your kids or not. You are you're walking right up to that guy and you're saying, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing?" Like, that
this was
a huge
really
red flag for me.
This was really the wrong Doctor to choose, because if any Doctor looks like a guy you'd steer your kids away from, it's Capaldi.
It's eyebrows.
Right? It's the attack eyebrows, and nobody. If it was Jodie's Doctor, it'd be fine, right? You totally believe it.
Oh, yeah, and you could, and they could easily make some excuse, be friendly about it, Oh, just the local nutritionist or something, or the local preschool. I don't know. Like, it would be a little weird, but still, it would be all right. So that just felt wrong.
Yeah.
The other stuff in Truth or Consequences, I got so hung up on her being alone. Like, literally, it was just you, Kate. You have no backup whatsoever, and she even says, "Oh, there's no backup." Like, well, wait, why does she have no backup?
Why? And also, so we're supposed to believe that everyone in Truth or Consequences. First of all, we're supposed to believe that only Clara knows that Truth or Consequences is a town in New Mexico.
Nobody Googled it.
Yeah, no, Google it, as the Doctor said. Like, even the Doctor didn't know. Which is just crazy. I thought.
Yeah, agreed.
I thought everyone knew about Truth or Consequences.
Well,
and
I gotta say, it kind of got by me, and maybe I I don't know. Like, why is the actual town Truth or Consequences even involved? Did that town inspire the name of the Zygon Splinter Group? Like, it just seems like this too clever writing. Like, what was that? It almost feels like a bootstrap paradox in terms of writing. Like, there was no original idea of Truth. Was it the town or the Splinter Group? Like, which came first?
I mean, Doctor Who, it appears when Doctor Who does America, it's either Manhattan or it's, Western Desert. Right. Like, there's no in between. And it just that so much of the Zygon Invasion feels like a BBC show trying to do an American movie on the cheap. So many American movie cliches, like they just can't do it. Like, the way that all the unit officers are dressed up, and the lingo they use, and all of that, it just doesn't wash for me. And maybe it's because I know the unit head officer that they have in the Turkmenistan, or whatever it's called.
Yeah. It can't be Turkmenistan, because I think that's
exactly.
real.
Exactly.
Turkmenistan.
That's right. They've disguised it cleverly, although they haven't. They haven't disguised the name of the American state. It's not New Mexico. It's kind of weird. But like, Truth or Consequences is a town of 6,200 people. You'd think you would know if everyone in it had disappeared.
Yeah. It's a bit, it's like there's a bubble in all of these sort of little zones that they sort of create, and it's just not realistically sort of interacting with the real world. I gotta say, the Turkmenistan stuff. Okay, so honestly, I thought that part, performances or Americanisms aside, I thought that worked. But I would say it worked upon reflection. I remember at the time. So this is obviously the scene where the unit soldiers who have been trained to understand that the Zygons will change appearance to people they know and try to confuse them.
Yes.
Despite that training, they are basically confused enough. And I think on an intellectual level, this shouldn't work, but
No.
on an emotional level, it does. Like to explain, I think it's like that doubt you can't train yourself out of it. You know, you can't shoot your mom. Even if there's a 1% chance they're telling the truth, you're gonna put down your gun. And even though everyone's screaming at the TV, "What are you doing?" I was less bothered by that this time because I'm like, well, that's just what you're gonna do. You're gonna have to either do an airstrike or something because this isn't. You can't just send people in there because they'll always just put down the gun. And I think that whether true or not, I get that's the point Moffat was trying to make, and I think actually it kind of works. What did you think?
Yeah, it's a bit like I can believe that they wouldn't shoot, but then to go the extra step of having them just follow the Zygons into the church.
Right.
Like, come in, take a look. And they're all just like, you have to go an extra step and say that they've been hypnotized somehow.
Yeah, that's fair.
You have to throw in a line about that. Because otherwise, I mean, it does have a kind of a fever dream logic to it in the sense of like, you watch yourself in dreams do something sort of increasingly stupid and you're like, no, why? Like, so it's dream logic. But yeah, you just need an extra little bit there, an extra line.
They should have glossed on something. Yeah, that's true. Because otherwise, it's not. Yeah.
But that whole thing of like the single police officer, and it's such a like at this point the smart thing to do in the script, which was Peter Harness, I believe, was the writer for this one, rather than the second one was done as a co-script with Moffat, or at least Moffat's name is on the second one as well. But it's like we're so trained to expect reversals like that by modern movies. Like, it's such a cliche to have everything be a reversal. And oh no, she's not actually a police. Oh no, it's not actually Clara. Like, you know, the thing to do to upend her expectations would actually be to have, you know, people you didn't expect to turn into a Zygon, and maybe you didn't expect Clara. I don't know. I do get to the Clara thing. The Clara as a Zygon reveal is muddied because we start wondering why she took her Clara pretense so far as to gasp when she saw herself in a Zygon pod. Why bother? Yeah. Why not just turn on the unit team as soon as you have them where you want them in the Zygon pit?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
like she knows she's on a TV show. Yeah. The Clara reveal, I think is good. Apart from that, like I do like that she ends up being a Zygon, and I think Coleman in the second episode is amazing, like in terms of her performance. So Inversion certainly levels things up, but as I'm sure your review will reveal.
But yeah, I mean, the problem is, you know, and I get to this. I talk about it later on as like you can hear the thud of the chess pieces as everyone is moved into place in this episode. Like it feels so artificial, and part of that I get to next is the Doctor's motivations. The new loosey goosey version. I defended the Sonic sunglasses. I don't know if you were a fan of Sonic sunglasses.
I think it was a fine experiment to do. Yeah.
I like it. It's fine. It's no less silly than the screwdriver. I like the electric guitar. Seems like the kind of thing a time-traveling immortal will get around to learning at some point. But here was the thing that went too far with me with the Doctor. To watch him decide to fly rather than take the TARDIS to Turkmenistan when time is on the Ephes because he wants to, quote, ponce about in a big plane. It seems a rock star step too far. It's the same plane the Doctor was forced aboard when he became the emergency president of the world. Now he boards it like a hungover Keith Richards doing his President Nixon impression. And this is a Time Lord who just detests being trapped in any kind of metal box, and he's super impatient and he wants to get where he's going, and now he just fancies hanging out in business class on a 10-hour transatlantic flight or cross-continental flight or whatever it is, and it's just so clearly maneuvering him into position so that Bonnie can attack him with a bazooka, and it just makes him seem dumb to me.
I agree. It's one of these things where, as we said, Moffat's kind of it's almost done purely, like, obviously there's the plot reason for the rocket launcher, but like he just kind of wants to make that joke about him pouncing about, which is funny. I mean, he actually makes it a couple of times. And similarly, the Union Jack.
Yeah, that may be he's
again,
goes from Keith Richards to James Bond, basically.
Yeah, and it's hilarious, but there's no reason for it. Like, what? The president of the Earth gets a Union Jack.
And the essential thing about the Doctor and the presidency of the Earth, just like the presidency of Gallifrey, like, is that he resists it. He doesn't want it to happen in Dark Water, Death in Heaven, right?
Which is kind of like the punching about line. I think Moffat thinks it's the get out of jail free card for that it isn't, right? Like, it isn't, because, well, if you're making fun of people punching about in these things, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
You know? So he just doesn't really follow through on what is actually a really nice sort of subversive idea about authority.
Yeah. And we don't mention it, but like, people died on that the pilot, the crew, whoever's on that plane, unless that plane was flying itself. People died because the Doctor wanted to ponce about on that big plane.
Well, and I don't want to fast forward too far because I think we're going to get to Inversion next. But this is one of my issues with the whole resolution, which is why, honestly, I think I am less of a fan of this story than I was at the time, because everything in the two-parter is, again, chess pieces moved clumsily to do this master stroke of speech for Peter Capaldi, which is probably his definitive speech and moment in his entire run. So it is so cut above like everything else in the episode, and it's huge and cut above a lot of the other things he's done. But it does ultimately gloss over a lot of the tragedy that's happened, and sure, some of it was off screen, but some of it wasn't. You know, the unit soldiers all getting slaughtered, you know, the town of Truth or Consequences, all these things. And you are a little bit like, okay, like, am I supposed to think about that? I'm probably not supposed to, but you made me think about it, so I am. One, it doesn't work as a plot resolution, because at the very end, Kate Stewart's memory is apparently erased. Well, you can't erase all those deaths. So what exactly happened? And it doesn't work, you know, emotionally when you have more time to reflect on it as I did this time. And so I love Capaldi's moment. It's a great moment. We'll talk about it. But story-wise, I think this one, it suffers. It makes the whole overall experiment suffer, unfortunately.
It's problematic for so many reasons, pre and post, right? The speech, right? Like, you're right. The speech is absolute genius. It gives me shivers every time. It gave me shivers this time. And if that's all the episode was, it would be great. But they undercut the speech by revealing that he's done it, 17 times, he says?
15. He says
15 times.
Another 15 times. This is either the 15th or the 6th, I forget.
But 17 is the number of DVDs that Sally Sparrow had in Blink. That's why 17 is stuck in my head. Thank you, Blink.
You gotta know your numbers. How many doctors have there been, though? Whoa, no.
Okay, so I gave Zygon Inversion a B+ grade.
Okay.
And I talked about the poignancy of the speech and the fact that, you know, few wars have been described accurately to the participants in advance. You know, news on how great it would have been if the First World War generals had known that it wouldn't been over by Christmas, or LBJ had known what Vietnam was going to turn into, or, you know, George Bush had known what Iraq was going to turn into, right? And that's kind of what the Doctor does here.
Ukraine. I mean, geez.
Yes, exactly. You know, if someone had given that speech to Putin about, you know, well, what do you do once you've attained your utopia, right? And that's what you know. It's what are you going to do about the rebellious Bonnies of the next generation? And that question is what inverts the Zygon Invasion.
Yeah, it's just a masterful speech. I was, you know, like, really loved it at the time. Capaldi so steps up. Coleman gives him a lot to work with. I think her eyes say so much in that scene, especially when she changes.
Yes.
You know, I think she really, you know, like, it looks like she's not doing as much as him, and she isn't, but it is like she's not delivering. She's not phoning it in by any stretch.
No, oh my goodness! And I do to skip a little bit ahead in this review. I do say, the remainder of the episode belongs to the brilliant Jenna Coleman, who manages to thoroughly convince as both sides in the Clara Bonnie battle of wits. A showdown conducted over a TV could have easily looked laughable, and Coleman deserves the credit for making it work. And I particularly called out the bit where, she's trapped in the house and like that wonderful sort of nightmarish aspect of you open the door and the door's just bricked up. And she keeps her head and also how much this shows the development of Clara. Because I contrasted it with how she reacts to the Clockwork Man in Deep Breath, where she was just terrified. She was so terrified. But here she overcomes her fear of being trapped in that house. She overcomes the fear of Bonnie and manages to, text the doctor using Bonnie's fingers and all of this.
Yeah, I love that bit, like where, these, again, it sort of humanizes the Zygons, but you need to weigh a credible way for your heroes to sort of turn the tables on their captors or their enemies. And I think the way they delve into the human Zygon connection here is interesting. It's like they're linked, and I love the bit where because obviously Clara can use it to her advantage to sort of manipulate Bonnie to get a message to the doctor, but then when they talking to each other later, it's like the one thing you can never do is lie to me. And I thought that makes a ton of sense. And they're both kind of like using the connection against each other.
Yes.
Really smart writing. And
it really gives it the wonderful visual of Bonnie kind of holding her two fingers to her pulse.
Yeah.
I love that part. That's so good. It's like, I'll know. Which makes that not just a psychological, but also gives you the physical aspect of it as well. So fantastic. But yeah, a lot of filler to get us there and a lot of filler to get us to the Black Archive scene. And then this is why I say, I raise the question, why not give this episode an A grade? Because when we find out the boxes aren't connected to anything, it takes the wind out of the scene's sails. The threat was never real. It's happened 15 times already. Presumably he gave the same speech every time. Wouldn't it feel a little shop-worn by now?
Also, why is she behaving differently now? It doesn't make sense. If your memory's been erased and you're getting the same speech every time, what is different about this time? The only thing I can figure out is that the doctor himself is iterating and that he's improving the speech every time, getting to know Bonnie better every time. And then this is it. He's perfected it and finally gotten through to her. So, but again, I think it's just under the whole 15 thing doesn't work story-wise, and it just undercuts the whole thing. It's just, you kind of feel too fooled as a viewer, right? Like it's the final reveal, but it ends up being a rug pull. It's a Moffat step too far. We've talked before on the show about how Moffat loves to write about memory and the loss of memory. Obviously, that's a big deal with the silence. We noted it in The Beast Below, and that might be another reason why the randomizer brought us here, because it doesn't quite work in The Beast Below either, right? Because they, just to remind you, if you hit the forget button on The Beast Below, as many of us did, that people were asked on Starship UK to vote whether to protest or forget the fact that they were riding on the back of a giant star whale. And people always voted to forget, apparently. So clearly Moffat loves the memory wiping idea. He plays with it with the Black Archives and Day of the Doctor as well, where it really works. Remember the memory worms? I did forget the memory worms. One of the memory worms. That was usually played for laughs with respect to Strax, and you touch the memory worm and you lose a certain amount of memory. And I think that eventually that's how they defeated the human part of the great. We'll get to that. It's in the the simian who's fueling the great intelligence. Yes. Indeed. Okay. Yeah. So clearly, Moffat is just a little too enamored with the idea of writing about how scary it is to forget things, because we shouldn't have that. Like, yes, it's in the Black Archive, but if this is clearly post Day of the Doctor, like,
why are we going back to the Black Archive thing? And also, wouldn't the Zygons have thought that it was in the Black Archives? Like, the big reveal after 2 episodes is the Osgood box is in the Black Archive. Like, the first place you should have looked. Why wouldn't they think it's in a secret base underneath a London landmark? Come on.
You almost want the Doctor to say, remarkable. Why? We still have the set. Let's go.
Yes, it's a different kind of set anyway. Like, it doesn't even look like the same Black Archive set. It's
kind of lit the same. Like, I got vibes on it. When particularly when Tennant and Smith had their feet up, because they could do a callback to that.
I love
lit
that.
very
love
similarly
that
from the top down. So.
I mean, the best part of the speech, I will just to really nail that one to the mast. It's the fact that the Doctor talks about his own pain in it, right? He talks about like hearing screaming inside his head all the time, like all of the mistakes he's made, all of the the trolley problems, as it were, that he's had to solve over the years. He has, even if he wasn't responsible for the destruction of Gallifrey, he's been responsible for the destruction of a lot. Yes. And the death of a lot of people. And it still gives me chills now to think of it. That whole line of like, what do you take with that? What do you do with that pain? What do you do with those screams? You turn it into something that, you make sure no one ever has to do that again.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My goodness.
It's amazing. It's perfect. And it honestly, like, it's not just a great moment for Capaldi's Doctor. It's a great moment for the Doctor. I think it really shows how he has dealt with, healed and recovered from the Time War and his everything he dealt with there. I think, and this is kind of a little bit of retconning emotionally, I'll admit, but like if you look at the way Eccleston played the Doctor all the way through Tennant and Smith, and again they sort of did their best with this too with Day of the Doctor too. But I think here you kind of really get kind of the emotional feeling and the explanation at the same time of like how he sees that now that he remembers it all, post Day of the Doctor.
Indeed, it does feel like an evolution, right? It feels like the next step from the man who regrets and the man who forgets, and now here's the man who takes all that pain and anger and fury at himself and uses it for good.
Yeah, and I would love to see them go a little further with a sort of a multi-Doctor journey with RTD, sort of building on this, because it's like I feel like this is almost a capstone on the whole Time War emotional journey, and then, but taking further what's happened since then, right, with Whittaker and the destruction of Gallifrey, and she played that really well. I don't know if Chibnall sort of knew where he wanted to go emotionally with that, but I think RTD in terms of that journey he doesn't have to explain everything or whatever. Even though the whole Weeping Angel is destroying Gallifrey thing is really good, you could still use that RTD. But I think seeing like there's
next week's episode for that. Yes,
but there's a new emotional journey to go on now, right? And I think there are things he could go with. God was Doctor in terms of perhaps even a multi-year emotional arc to sort of figure out where he fits in the cosmos now. So like I like that idea of the Doctor is constantly recovering from some trauma or of some kind. Yeah. And it's a journey that we go with him on, and there are milestones on it, and this is definitely a big one in the whole new era.
And I can't imagine another actor like this. Is really where Capaldi shows that he is one of the best actors, from an actor's actor perspective, to take on the role of the Doctor, maybe the best. Just in that sense, just in the sense of acting the crap out of this scene, because you feel the emotion so powerfully in a way that I don't know if any other Doctor could do that. The way that that righteous fury. When
he's on the verge of breaking down in a couple of points, right? Like he really believes it. Like again, I love all the other Doctors and Smith, Tennant, Eccleston. I could see maybe Eccleston doing it just because he was sort of the most.
Yeah, Eccleston could be good. Eccleston, you've got to be able to like turn on a dime between impersonating an American game show host and yelling with rage and fury, and part of it's at yourself, the rawness of that. So to go from the, sarcastic accent to raw emotion in 5 seconds and make you believe it, make you not really see the left turn.
That's kind of why, he really sells the idea of, and Coleman too, of that someone of that mindset, that terrorist mindset, which I don't think rational people can really fully understand, but like reversing themselves and sort of really, once you're faced with what is going to happen afterward. Again, I'm not saying the real world tends to be a little more obviously gritty and complicated, but I wouldn't mind seeing this speech as a required viewing for anyone who's thinking about being a terrorist, right? Because you should really think through where you're going with this. And again, certainly it's a lot of these causes that people attach themselves to are beyond this kind of thing. So I'm not under no illusions that it would make a ton of difference in the real world, but hey, it's worth a shot.
It's funny you should say that, because I wrote this paragraph. It's a brilliant piece of television, the kind of scene you want to show to every warring tribe on Earth. Simply telling revenge seekers to break the cycle of violence has never worked. Making them imagine the true consequences, the counter-revenge, a generation down the line, by people who think just like they do, that might do the trick. And I think it's real. I think maybe the UN should be, there should be required viewing at the UN. I'd love to see that.
I would too. It'd be awesome.
Get Putin up on stage with the truth or consequences button, and get him.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you about that I don't think fully worked for me was the idea that if all the Zygons, and again, we know the boxes don't have real things hooked up to them, so this probably wouldn't have happened anyway. But if the Zygons are suddenly all revealed on Earth, so their genuine form, they said a lot, right? It's like 20 million, so it's a lot.
Yes.
Does that really mean instant war? You know what I mean? It's suddenly, especially if they're still themselves, right? They're not being controlled by truth or consequences. They're just revealed. Yes. So they still, most of these people, presumably, still just want to be peaceful and hey, we don't want a war. Would there really be a war? We'd be all freaked out a bit, and certainly there'd be some violence and skirmishes, and there'd be how the hell did this even happen? Who agreed to this? But would the world end? Would both people want to just kill each other off the bat? I don't know if that. I'd like to think that wouldn't happen. That might happen in the classic series.
Yeah,
but today,
I mean, it does speak to the notion that Bonnie's group is just a lot of terrorists. They don't actually know what they're doing. They think, we'll provoke a war. Well, no, you're actually just signing your own death warrant, right? That was what Bin Laden did, right? Attack the World Trade Center, to provoke a war, and he said he wanted to provoke America into becoming a fascist, militaristic nation. Well, it just ended with his own, shooting 12 years later.
Within the story is that. I wish they would sort of maybe been a bit more explicit about that. You know what I mean? Because one of the buttons was supposed to do that, So, but it is a little, well, if it happens, that's a lot less of a consequence than, say, releasing a gas that will assuredly kill all the Zygons, which again, nothing was hooked up. But if you're imagining these things are real, one is a bigger consequence than the other.
Yes, indeed. The gas we should mention, we haven't mentioned it yet, but this is what Harry Sullivan has been working on, right?
Yeah.
And another randomizer connection, we learn that he was working on a secret project in Mordred Undead.
That's true.
Remember? And that's what this turns out to be.
Something hush-hush and Porton Down, which is a real place, apparently.
I think it is indeed. I think the Doctor kind of repeats his line from Revenge of the Cybermen about Harry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, another randomizer connection. So it's totally all connected to shows that we've done. It feels like the randomizer have been building up to this.
Exactly. It's been
over a year.
Speaking of chess pieces, right?
Really?
Sure. We did Day of the Doctor, Mordred Undead, Revenge of the Cybermen. Yep. It's all there.
It's all there. It's extraordinary. And yeah, so the randomizer is showing us that it's a better writer of plot than Stephen Moffat. The way it moves its chess pieces into place, we didn't even know that we were heading here. It's brilliant. But yeah, to your point, I also had a paragraph about, and this is the last quote I'll give you from the review. Where they, they encounter a poor chap whose Bonnie has involuntarily transformed back into a Zygon. She did it and uploaded a video of the transformation in the hopes that the human race would declare war in fear and disgust at a YouTube video, which suggests she really hasn't spent a lot of time on YouTube.
Yep.
Which is like, you saw that on YouTube, you'd just be like, okay, you'd be like, oh, cool CGI. Cool CGI, bro. First of all,
happy slapping was better than this.
Exactly. You'd be like, what is that costume? Is it Halloween already?
Is this the new trend I have to get on? I'm sure I'm going to see 10 videos like this on TikTok tomorrow.
Exactly. It would be remixed on TikTok so fast. People would be running down the street in their own Zygon costumes.
Yeah, it definitely seems like one of the points here is terrorists are dumb.
Yep.
Except when they're talking to the human captor, they're replicating and holding their wrist to check their pulse. They're pretty dumb. So here's another thing. Like, Kate Stewart's in this. We love Kate Stewart. It's really great to see her again. And Gemma Redgrave is outstanding as always. The thing is, though, I think it's showing over time. I think the show is forgotten and we've forgotten. I think that in the very first time she appeared, which I believe was The Power of Three, she was supposed to be more of this moderated version of the Brigadier, right? Like, the Brigadier was always, let's go, lads, and let's make sure we surround things and call in an airstrike, et cetera, et cetera.
Always call in an airstrike.
Yeah. So, but Kate was supposed to be from the sort of scientific side, or she had both chops. She was both sort of military and a thinker. And I feel like over time, because you no longer have that full-on soldier, she's drifted in that direction because too many scripts need it. Like, she seems like she's pretty quick to want to bomb things or set off bombs or shoot people, which again is all very cool. And I really, the 5 rounds rapid, that's a great callback.
What is that from? Was the original?
That was from the Damons. Yes. Chop of the wings there. 5 rounds rapid. So
love it.
It's all great, but I do feel like she's not quite, like, we already have a doctor and we already have an Osgood, so she kind of just inherently sort of takes on the role of soldier, which is fine. Again, I think for this episode it really works, and I think the fact that she's the first one to close the box is one, shows she's more the rational one, but also like probably is sort of an 11th hour recovery of that intellectual, scientific, smart choice person that I think she was always supposed to be.
Yeah. I do, speaking of soldiers, and the person who really plays the soldier here is an actress called Rebecca Front, who plays the character Walsh in Turkmenistan. Like, she's the unit commander there, the colonel.
Oh, I forgot about her, honestly.
Now, if you like me were like, I've seen her before and I just can't remember. Have you seen The Thick of It? The show that Capaldi was most famous for. Yeah. So she was in it she's the hapless minister that Capaldi is shouting at in the later seasons, which is kind of reminded me that, first of all, like, the loosey-goosey Capaldi is much more like his role in The Thick of It in the Zygon Invasion than in anything else that Capaldi has done in Doctor Who, especially the line "Ponce about on a big plane." That's a very Malcolm Tucker line, his spin doctor character in The Thick of It. And so having him right there with Rebecca Front, it sort of seems like a wasted opportunity that they've got her. It's not really a good role for her as that colonel. I don't buy it. She's more a sort of she's just a different style of actor. Like, she's good at being berated and browbeaten.
Gotcha. I hate to say it. I completely forgot about her until you started talking about it. She's unfortunately, like, I think you're probably right that she just probably didn't have, or just wasn't quite the right actress for the role.
Yeah.
Because usually, like I actually, as much as she might be an overactor, I do remember the female cop at Truth or Consequences.
Yeah.
So do you know? I actually have no idea. Was she American?
That is a good question. It definitely sounded like a fake American accent to me. So
Yeah.
I apologize if that was not the case. But yeah, you got. I'm just sort of trained by Doctor Who's American episodes to, like, you got a 50-50 chance that it's going to be a Perry situation.
Yeah, well, that's a question we're going to have to answer at some point. But before we get to that answer, I think we need to have some other questions answered. And those, of course, are the 4 questions to Doomsday. First of the 4 questions is, why did the randomizer take us here? Oh, my God. Like, why didn't it take us here?
Exactly. I think this is brilliant. This is like, what is the randomizer going to do for a follow-up? It has tied together Day of the Doctor, Mordrin Undead, Darkwater Death in Heaven. What else did we mention in the course of the show?
Revenge of the Cybermen.
Revenge of the Cybermen with the Harry Sullivan reference. Wow. I mean, just... incredible work. My hat is off to you, randomizer. Can't wait to see where you take us next.
Yeah, and I think just like any genuine Doctor Who fan, you're a fan of the Zygons. You're like, hey, want to pep it up? Get some Zygons in there. They're fun.
I know. We're like one story away from completing our Zygon collection here. We really need
our
to
Scotland collection too.
Indeed. Well, we'd have to do the Highlanders for that, but a few more references. But we really need to start doing pull to open bingo. We've completed the whole set, or. I guess that might be a different card game.
It'd be good. Some listeners are good at bingo cards, right? Go ahead, make some bingo cards for the podcast, and we'll start punching them.
Yeah, and also you can make bingo cards for what we tend to say on the podcast, like or make it a drinking game every time I take a segue into history or politics. Take a drink.
Settle down. That's going to be encouraging alcoholism among our listeners. All righty. Time to get to the second question to Doomsday, which, of course, is, what if the evil plot had succeeded?
It's a difficult one because the evil plot does succeed.
Explain.
Explain. Because that's exactly we're seeing the unfolding of an evil plot succeeding. Like Bonnie does everything right. Everything goes right for the Truth or Consequences Splinter Group, and they get the Osgood box, and she has, I guess, if the evil plot succeeds, then she goes the extra step of pressing the button, and nothing happens.
Yeah. It went so well for them, they even got a really, really good logo designer. I have to say, that cool Truth or Consequences insignia that just sort of appears in a bunch of places. I think it's mostly an invasion rather than inversion, but it's like that was a really nice touch. Whoever thought
it shows up on the screens, I mean, maybe bring the Truth or Consequences group back. Maybe this is one of the spin-offs.
Yeah.
Or maybe, actually, you know what? Truth or Consequences was originally a game show, right? I don't think it's been on for decades. Maybe it's time to bring that back.
Oh. Well, what I was thinking was that, yes, everything happens the same way. What happens, though, is like whatever happened in the other 14 times, and she's not persuaded. So by the rules of the episode, the Doctor would just wipe their memory. So I honestly don't see a credible way within the boundaries of the show that this plot, how the evil plot would ever succeed. You'd have to assume Bonnie, in addition to nothing happening, somehow gets the drop on the Doctor, and then uses her electrocuting powers, and then just tries to get her vision of a war done by any other means. If she does and gets the war, the implication, I think, in my view, is that the Zygons lose, because they talk a few times in Invasion, or at least once, I think, about like, okay, you're 20 million Zygons, but there are 7 billion humans.
Yep.
And
You're not
if
gonna
there's a
win.
war, like you're just not going to win. Yes, it'll be bad, but you're not, again, they're not Daleks. They're not invulnerable. Like they're going to get killed. So they, what happens is if there is a war, the Zygons don't win, but it's probably something very dark for the world for a long time.
Yeah.
So you become this sort of dystopian place.
Well, you've got to think that the revelation that the humans have developed a nerve gas that will kill Zygons would allow certainly the Zygon splinter group, to feel that they would be justified in dropping nerve gas that kills humans.
Right. Interesting. So you kind of almost have a Silurian scenario where they're wiping out a massive amount of the population with either chemicals or biological weapons. Wow.
And it's kind of a very interesting time because 2015, I mean, that was in the middle of the Syrian civil war, right? Where, there was all this talk of nerve gas and that being a hard red line, and the hard red line being overcome by Assad. So I could totally see planes full of Zygons dropping gas on humans because it's like, turnabout is fair play.
Well, maybe they just resurrect a whole bunch of Loch Ness monsters and deploy them all over. So actually, that'd be kind of cool. The Zygon war version is like a Pacific Rim. And there's just this massive kaiju monsters everywhere, and then we have to respond with Torchwood tech. I don't know. That actually sounds like a pretty epic future for some future Earth war.
We have to fight all the Nessies by wearing kilts in the style of the Brigadier.
Be sure to hush them all up later, so no one remembers the Zygon Gambit.
We all have to turn into Groundskeeper Willie.
All right, so there's a third question to Doomsday, and here it is. Where is the Clara Splinter?
So so there's a lot of Clara in this episode.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a little harder to do the Clara Splinter in episodes with Clara in, but I think that one unanswered thing for me is like, why did the Doctor have that parachute?
Okay.
And I sort of I like the idea that the Clara Splinter was actually flying the plane. And just stalked the plane and somehow knew that she was going to die. And, the Doctor, because he's just poncing about in his big plane, probably didn't even bother going up to the cabin to check who was flying the thing.
Right. And she's probably pretty good, with the stick, which helps her evade the first missile or the first rocket. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Giving the Doctor just enough time. That seems, suicidal Clara Splinter enough, because that's basically what the Clara Splinter does, right? Sacrifices her life in many different circumstances. I'll
buy that. Because I punted on this one, just because there is already way too much Clara in this episode. I think if there's an episode the Clara Splinter just skips, I think it's this one. But Pilot of the Plane, I'll take it. Okay.
I think that does it. And she's just probably, this Clara is just a fan of James Bond, hence the Union Jack parachute.
There it is. All right, folks. The final question, the fourth question to Doomsday, the only question that will give a rating to this episode. It is our rating episode. Our rating question. Is it a Dalek, which is a good episode? Is it an Ogron, which is perhaps a not so good episode? A Professor Hater, which is a perhaps not so good episode, but at least we learned something, or a Viscount Banger, the rating we reserve for the best of the best. Should I go first this time? Because you've already reviewed this?
Yeah, do it.
Okay, so I was tempted to give one of my more, I don't think it's a Viscount Banger, number one, for many of the reasons we talked about, but the Capaldi speech is so good. I was tempted. I was like, it's just such a definitive moment for his Doctor, and it's a really good speech. So that said, I started thinking about the Dalek. So it's a Dalek for sure. Is it one of the Commander Daleks? Is it a Supreme Dalek? Not quite, because there's just still too much of the stuff that undercuts the speech itself.
Yeah,
exactly. like if you undercut other things, and a lot of things are undercut, like I can forgive it as long as the overall thing you're doing works. But there are too many things, like particularly the thing about the 15 times. It really bothered me this time. You just really feel like it's a rug pull, and I have to it's just a nice shiny Time War Dalek is what you got. This is a satisfying, end, and it's a must watch for anyone who's a fan of Capaldi, obviously. But ultimately, like it's not one of the best. So it sounds like a little bit of a backhanded praise. I praise this episode, but perhaps it's fitting.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because as I've mentioned before, like almost all of the new series stories that we've been to have been improved by a second viewing. Like even the ones we didn't particularly like, you kind of see more the second time around.
Right.
That wasn't the case for me this time. So I'm going to give a split decision. And one of the things we haven't mentioned in this review is the hybrid. The overarching season arc is to, the Doctor has to worry about the hybrid. Everything could be a hybrid. A Shielder could be a hybrid. The Dalek Time Lord hybrid, blah, blah, blah. Right. So I'm going to say that in keeping with this season, the Zygon Invasion and Zygon Inversion is a hater-banger hybrid.
It's a hater-banger hybrid.
Yeah, I was thinking Dalek Ogre, but no, it's hater-banger.
Wow. That's impressive. I get it, though. I get what you're going for there, because it's like that speech alone is kind of a banger. And then, but there's a lot of bad stuff that teaches you what a good, not just Doctor Who episode, but I think a good Capaldi episode should do, which this falls short on. Yes.
Yeah. So maybe it's not even a hype. Maybe it's a tribrid. It's a hater banger hater.
Oh, my memory's been wiped. I can't even remember what order they should be in.
That is what you said the first 15 times we did the show, Pete.
Oh. Guys, I don't know what just happened there. I just know it was great. But unfortunately, all things must come to an end, including this episode of Pull to Open. But before that happens, we have to figure out where this journey is taking us next, which means it's time to activate the randomizer.
That's right. It's time to leave the hybrid behind, step back into our TARDIS, and use the two components of the randomizer. Pete has one, the Codex. It's already been mentioned. It's the spreadsheet that we've made of our own decisions on what counts as a discrete story in the history of Doctor Who. We have a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 302 that is then plugged into random.org, which is the executor part of the randomizer. And that's where we get true randomness from atoms bouncing around the atmosphere rather than an AI-like attempt of a computer to be randomly random. Which you can't do via our algorithm. So
just make sure you haven't gone to the Zygon version of the website. Okay, don't go to the Zygon. They fool you. That's how they do it.
Yeah, you know what? It did. Every time I've loaded up random.org recently, it gives me a little, we're checking this website. We're checking the security of this website sign. So I'm actually wondering, is the true random.org trapped in a pod somewhere?
Ooh.
Yeah. But I guess we'll find out. But first, do we have a challenge from you for the randomizer, Pete?
And it's going to be it's going to be the most perhaps predictable challenge, which has nothing to do with the episode we just talked about. But we are recording this in the middle of the Christmas season, and I want to see how apt you can be, randomizer. There are a lot of Christmas episodes of Doctor Who. Why don't you take us to one of them? And I'm looking forward to being gifted the Daleks master plan.
I was going to say, it's going to take us to the Feast of Stephen. Thank you very much.
Because I secretly kind of want to get it out of the way. You and I think, are both dreading that coming up because it's going to be such. I'm excited to do it. It's just like that's 12 episodes we're going to have to either listen or sit through. So
we'll be like, we'll see you in 2023, everyone.
Yeah, take us to something Christmassy. What's your challenge?
I like that. I'm going to triple Yahtzee it this time. I'm going to say complete our Zygon trilogy.
Wow. Quite the dare.
Take us back to 1975. Give us original Zygons.
Ooh,
original flavor.
Yeah.
And I think this is good randomizer bait because we've already been to the Pyramids of Mars, right, which came right after the Zygon, Terror of the Zygons. And the randomizer does like to it likes to bunch things up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it's not completely out of bounds of reason, this 1 in 302 shot. It might want to take us there. So
weird stat on the Zygon Invasion / Inversion. In terms of the number of stories, like in terms of stories, it's now the cluster here is our biggest cluster of 3 in a row, which is to say the Zygon two-parter, Sleep No More and Face the Raven. We've done all of those. We've never done 3 stories in a row.
And actually, we did Hellbent, right? So we're just missing Heaven Sent.
Right. That'd be another dare. That'd get us like 5 in a row. Wow, we have a straight flush.
I don't think I want to. I don't think I want. I mean, I'll take it, but I don't think I want Heaven Sent yet because our problem is we're burning too many.
Agreed.
Too many good ones. Yeah.
Oh my God, we're giving the randomizer ideas now, though. Too many good. Okay, I think we're just gonna have to roll the dice. Are you ready?
All
sir?
right. Yes.
Here we go. In 4, 3, 2, 1.
Fantastic.
190. We're in New Who.
We're in New Who. Well, no. Here we go. It's. Oh my God! We just jinxed ourselves. We're at the Master Trilogy, Utopia, The Sound of Drums, and Last of the Time Lords.
Oh my God!
You know what it's doing?
Right on from Blink.
It's taken us the 3-episode conundrum, the fiasco. It was like, okay, you guys, you got it. You want 3 episodes? Here it is.
Yeah, you want a trilogy? Here's a trilogy that we ourselves made a trilogy. Because some people might want to break them up, right? We've used this as an example in the show before of how our numbering might differ from others.
And it's like, I know it's not the Daleks' master plan, but part of my thinking is like, wow, I've got to make some time this week to make sure we could get things. This is the equivalent of a 6-episoder. In the classic series. So
it's not the Daleks' master plan, it's the Master's Toclafane plan.
See what you did there.
Thank you.
Guys, this has been amazing. Thanks for sitting in with us here as we talked about the Zygon Invasion / Inversion. Hey guys, it's Pull to Open. It's a podcast. It's a thing you listen to in podcast apps like Spotify, like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Breaker, all the good ones. We're on Overcast, Outcast. I don't even know if that's a service, but I'm sure we're on it. And if you're on a service where you can leave either a rating or review, please do so. Also, why don't go ahead and follow us on TikTok, where we're always uploading new clips from the show and interacting with people commenting there. We're at Pull to Open on TikTok. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at Pull to Open 63. Hey, you like your podcast with some video? We're also on YouTube. We're at youtube.com/pull to open. Lots of good comments there. All the good stuff is coming to you every week. We're going to see you next week for some epic season-ending New Who action with Utopia, Sound of Drums, Last of the Time Lords.
We will see you with Captain Jack at the end of the universe. Stay safe until then.
Cheers, folks.